Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that demystifies business for artists. Today on the show, we have Desiree Duffy, publicist and marketing book expert extraordinaire. But before we get into it, I have two quick announcements. The first is that my book, the book I wrote for you, Sell Your Soul, How to Build Your Creative Career, all about making great content, selling it, building an audience, and launching products, is available on Amazon at GoSellYourSoul.com. Seriously, if you've enjoyed any of these shows, but especially if you've enjoyed these shows and are like, man, I wish I had a guide so I don't have to jump around to all of the episodes, this is your book. So head on over to GoSellYourSoul.com and check it out. Secondarily, my friend Tyler James, who runs the Comics Launch podcast, is doing another 5-day Kickstarter challenge, and he has a special message for you. Here it is.
Hey there, Business of Art podcast listeners. This is Tyler James from the Comics Launch podcast, which is crowdfunding for writers, artists, and self-publishers on Kickstarter and beyond. First, I want to send a quick congratulations to Russell for the publication and launch of his new book, Sell Your Soul. I bought my copy. It's great, and I strongly suggest you head over to Amazon and get yours as well if you haven't already. And second, I wanted to tell all of the writers and artists listening out there who are thinking about launching a Kickstarter project in the near future, I wanted to make sure you know about the upcoming 5-day Kickstarter challenge that I'm hosting this month. Now, starting on September 18th, I'll be leading hundreds of creators through 5 short challenges to plan their first or next wildly successful Kickstarter project in just 5 days, even if you have no crowdfunding experience, no audience, or even no project idea at this point. It's absolutely free to join and a great opportunity to connect with other talented and like-minded creators to help you get ready for your next best launch. To find out more and to sign up for this live challenge, just go over to comicslaunch.com/fall challenge. That's COMIX launch.com/fall challenge. Thanks again, Russell, and thanks for listening to The Business of Art.
So that was Tyler James from Comics Launch. I was part of the first Kickstarter challenge, and he's just made it bigger and better since then. So go check it out today. Now, a note before we get started. Some of you who are loyal listeners may know that I've been having a lot of problems with my computer and with recording. I've had a couple of episodes that didn't pick up the microphone that I use and instead decided to record into my computer. And these episodes, this episode and the next episode, are 2 of those episodes. So I'm sorry for the crappy audio quality. Luckily, my computer decided to record perfect audio for the guests, which is what's important. But I sound like shit. And I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to fix the problem. I didn't know it was a problem again until after I recorded and batched these 2 episodes. So, I mean, I get it if you don't want to listen to these episodes. I think they're still great. And Desiree and Matt Harry next week are fantastic guests. You just have to put up with the fact that, like, my audio sounds like garbage. If you can do that, you're going to get a ton of value out of this one. That being said, let's get on with this episode with Desiree Duffy. Take it away, Desiree. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
Right now, with us entering fall and the holidays looming right around the corner, I'm really passionate about getting authors motivated to start their holiday marketing now. Actually, in many cases, they should have already started. I see it all the time. People come to me at the 11th hour and say, hey, look, I just launched my book. Now it's time to start the marketing. And yeah, I can help you, and I'll get you into the Authors Network, which is my premier service. And we'll be able to make a dent, but really your marketing starts in advance. And when the holidays are coming up, especially, I mean, you've got the fall season, right? You've got Halloween, and then we kind of fall into November with Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, and then obviously Christmas and all the gift-giving holidays. And then even after that, people get gift cards for Christmas. They need to go shopping on Amazon. You need to encourage them to go buy your book. So there's a whole strategy that people can put into place, but it's really hard to do if on November 1st they're like, oh, hey, wow, I need to start my holiday marketing now. I'm already booking. I just booked an interview with one of my authors at the end of January. So in a way, you have to think of it this way. If you're doing PR and marketing, it's actually rude and unprofessional for me as a publicist or for an author who's trying to promote their book to go to media outlets, to go to radio stations and blogs, etc., and try to get an interview or a book blurb or some kind of media done in the 11th hour, because then you're not respecting their time either. So to sum that all up, what I'm really focused on right now and passionate about, because this is fun, like this time between the end of summer and the beginning of the year, me, it's just like you're on top of that ski slope, about ready to go whoosh down, because it goes so fast. It's so much fun. I like the spirit of all of the seasons. People are generally in a good mood, and it's just a great time to promote and market your books. So right now, that's what I'm passionate about.
Awesome. All right, so that leads me to my next question, which is, okay, so I am, this is probably, well, for me, it's always been the toughest time to put together a promo package, because I'm going up against, like, all of the heavy hitters are, like, releasing their best books for the holidays around this time. So what do you do to compete against all of those other books that are already at the forefront of people's minds for the holiday season?
You know, every audience is different, and I know you understand this particularly. If you're an author and you have your genre, if you built up your audience, whether that exists as an email list or you have your Facebook fans, whatever, every place you have an audience, you have fans, you have people who are hungry for your books. Always start with that. That's your core. Don't worry about what the big guys are doing. They're doing it in mass, and I understand that that can seem like you're battling the 800-pound gorilla, but all those indie authors out there really do have the ability to tap into their audiences, especially if they are very niche and they have that way to kind of strike a chord with people who are really, really interested in something very particular that they have to offer. So I wouldn't worry about that. Now, things to be cognizant of is if you're doing advertising, for example, online, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, Google AdWords, etc., your rates are actually going to go up this time of the year. So you really need to focus and pinpoint your audience. To talk maybe just a little bit about Google AdWords or Facebook ads. The reason I like doing ads with those two platforms in particular is because it gives me the ability to really drill down into audience interests. And the closer you get to the interest of your audience, the greater likelihood you have of making a sale. So make sure that you're balancing the ability to drill down, hit that target audience against the return on your investment or the cost that it's going to take you to get there, because you are competing with more keywords. But that's also where you have to be just a little bit more intelligent. And I don't want to go too far on like an AdWords or an SEO rant here, but
no, go
as
far.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit because I want to explain what keywords are for people in your audience that might not be aware. So keywords are a list of words that you do for SEO and or for Google AdWords, or you can do Bing advertising as well. And these words are...
What is SEO for people that in the audience that
Sure.
don't know?
Search engine optimization. So I have a website. I want to draw people to me. One of the very first things I do is make a list of keywords. These are the words that people are going to type into Google or Bing or whatever to find my website. And when you're doing this, a lot of first-timers or people who kind of understand what's going on but not really will put down things like, well, I wrote a book, so when people look for books, I want them to find me. And I'm going to say, no, we want to go into more of your long-tail keywords. In other words, your keyword phrases, several words that people might be searching for. I want to find people who are ready to buy books or recommend a new book. And then I'm even going to go further and I'm going to really think about my genre. Doesn't make sense for me to pull people to my website as somebody who writes horror novels and thrillers if they're looking for romance novels. They're not going to convert. So you really got to think about the words, the keywords, those keyword phrases that are pulling people to your website. Now that's SEO. Again, search engine optimization, and it's an organic approach. Organic means you basically don't, quote unquote, pay for it as advertising. Though if you're going to do it and you're going to do it right, you probably want to hire an SEO specialist. Otherwise, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. Now, on the flip side of that, there's Google AdWords. And again, Bing and all of the search engines offer their variation of advertising through keyword search. It's called search engine marketing, or SEM. You've probably heard that term before. And so again, get into the mind of the consumer now. They're shopping. They're looking maybe during Small Business Saturday because they know they want to find something for their niece. You want to make sure that you have keywords in place that pull them to you and your very particular book. Now, the big guys, they're doing SEM too. Trust me, they are. But because they have so many different titles and so many different books, chances are they're doing it in a much broader capacity, whereas, again, you can zero in on the keywords that are going to pull people to your site and then hopefully make a conversion.
Excellent. I love it. Small Business Saturday is the Saturday of Thanksgiving, correct?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have one thing kind of plop into the next one there with Black Friday, and then the whole idea when Small Business Saturday started was, hey, all these small businesses kind of need their special day too, because Black Friday tended to be for your big box stores, your Walmarts and such like that with their big, huge sales. So, again, as an author, whether you're an indie or even if you're with one of the bigger publishers, you can take advantage of Small Business Saturday sales and things like that because, again, you're getting into the mindset of the consumer. So if they're thinking to themselves, I want to support somebody who's small, well, who's better to support when they're small than an indie author, right?
Right, exactly. So what would you say to an author who says, well, yeah, but when people come to my site during the holidays, they always wonder if it's something that what their family wants, because like my family has their families have Christmas lists, and when they come to my site, they're looking for something that their family would recognize. Like what would you tell somebody to overcome their fear of doing ads because of that reason during the holiday season?
I think when people are shopping online, a lot of times they might have somebody particular in mind. It might be for their granddaughter. Imagine grandma sitting there searching for a new YA novel for her granddaughter. So you can actually, again, optimize your site and make the look and feel and perhaps even offer packages that kind of cater to grandma who's doing that search. You can present your product. And again, it's hard to say because you'd have to actually look at the individual author and the books that they offer to kind of see how you can position them so that when the consumer gets there, they say, oh, that would be great for Uncle Ben, or that would be perfect for, Aunt Gertrude. But I think there's ways that you can do it. And one thing, too, that I like to do sometimes is actually do holiday gift baskets so that when people order the book, they get a few other goodies along with it. So it kind of feels like a well-rounded gift. You can throw in things like, chocolate candy bars and hot cocoa, coffee mugs, things that you can basically get for relatively cheap to kind of augment your product that you're selling. So again, I think it's just a matter of really thinking about what the consumer thinks and feels when they get to your site and responding to that. You can take your one book, if you have just one book, you can take it and package it, quote unquote, package it in different ways. Take a cue from consumer goods. Think about how you can see virtually the same product over and over again, packaged and promoted in different ways. One of my favorite brands of all time is Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Now, when we think of Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, we think of the candy bar, right? And then there's Reese's Pieces. And then there's Reese's Pieces breakfast cereal. There's cake flour and cookie mix and all of these other little sub-brands. And the reason that Reese's is doing that is because they can appeal to different people. So now they're not just interested in the person who is buying a candy bar. They're thinking about the grandmother who's cooking for her grandchildren. They're thinking about mom who's pouring breakfast cereal for her kids. They're thinking about the many different ways that the consumer is actually going to consume and want to consume that product.
I love that idea. I love the idea of gift baskets and thinking of yourself as a consumer good. But let's say someone has one edition of their book. So they have a hardcover edition of their book. They don't have like a hardcover and then graphic novel and then a bunch of different things to package. Are you saying to basically make the book the centerpiece of a gift basket with a whole bunch of other stuff from other small businesses inside of it, or like how would you go about like putting it inside a gift basket like this, like you're talking about?
This is kind of off the top of my head. For example, say we have one book and we're just going to kind of give it a general thriller fiction type category. What if we put it into a very masculine gift basket so it could fit the male reader? Something along the lines of, a sturdy coffee cup and maybe a little thing of, instant coffee with it, and, a manly looking candle. And then on the flip side, if we were going to market that same book to a woman who might want to read it, we can do maybe some gourmet tea with it or fuzzy socks, things like that. So again, it's the same product. It's just a different type of a gift basket so that they can give that gift basket to Uncle Joe or to Aunt Gertrude, and either way, it's going to work. Again, it kind of goes back to the genre and the type of book. You're going to have a hard time probably packaging up a YA novel with a female protagonist for good old Uncle Joe, but there are ways where you can kind of dig down into your different layers of your demographics to appeal to them.
Awesome. I love it. And this is all happening on your website, right? So you're driving all of this traffic to your website, not to Amazon.
I like to drive traffic to one's website just because I feel that is the hub for everything that you have. From there, if you want to drive people to Amazon, you can. I think we as authors, we all have this love-hate relationship with Amazon, don't we? And it just boils down to no matter what we do, the consumer is always going to feel more comfortable making a purchase on Amazon. Chances are they're an Amazon Prime member. They feel comfortable because they know the brand, they can trust it. Everybody gets a little bit leery when we go to a website and that website is asking for our information and our credit card, etc. So I recommend drive the traffic to your website as much as you can, but once they get there, give them a very clear option to go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, wherever, to make the purchase, because at the end of the day, people are going to buy where they feel comfortable, and you don't want to lose a sale because you're trying to force them to buy only from you.
Absolutely. I love that as well. Could you, so as a publicist, could you talk a little bit about how to put together an appropriate press kit, or like what you're looking for, what you send out to people when they ask for a press kit?
It is amazingly simpler than most people imagine, but also a little bit more complicated because of the fact that it's simpler. It is rather akin to when you write your novel and then you have to go back over it and edit it. It's really easy to put together these big old honkin' comprehensive press kits that have way too much information. Me, as a publicist, when I'm pitching somebody, the very first contact that magazine or radio show or whatever has with me is a paragraph and one link, and I just want to hook them in. It's very similar to when you're writing the hook for your book or your log line. I just need to interest them in the topic or the stories that my author can tell. And then after that, I need a bio. A lot of times people come to me and they have, a page or even 2 pages of a bio, and really I need maybe a paragraph or 2 very similar to when you write a resume, don't pad it. If you're a relatively young author and you've only got one book under your name, don't try to go into stuff that you were doing in high school and on the debate team, etc. You just need to make it relevant. And also think about, again, before we're talking about getting into the mindset of the consumer, now we're getting into the mindset of the producer or the talk show host or the blogger. What are they looking for? I always tell my authors, I need the story behind the story, because there's a really good chance they don't want to just have you on the show to talk about your book for an hour, even though they're going to get around to that. They want to know why you wrote that book. Why are you an expert? Why are you an authority and somebody that they want to talk to? I've had people, and I do have people, clients, who've written memoirs, and it touches on mental health. This author, I am now getting on different types of mental health, wellness type shows with doctors and authorities. So there's always a way for me as a publicist to take that author and position them as somebody who is interesting to talk to. And then that goes back to that bio and that background information, just making sure that I have a couple of bullet points or things that I can take and pitch the author with. If you've done traveling to research your book, that makes you interesting. So I might want to know about the different research or the historical relevance of what you've written, so that we can go on shows that might want to look at the underbelly of the history of a certain location. A lot of my authors, excuse me, tend to, lean toward genre fiction as well. So this time of the year with Halloween coming up, it's fun to pitch them for different shows that, are like about, haunted locations and things like that. I recently had one of my authors on America's Most Haunted, because he knows a lot about the different haunted history in Los Angeles. Even though his books are fiction, he did the research, which makes him an expert, which gives me the ability to pitch him for shows like that, because that's what they're looking for. So again, going back to the press kit, you've got your bio, you've got your little pitch or your little log line, and then a nice headshot. I can't say this enough. I'll get a headshot, and, I've had to Photoshop nails in the wall behind people's heads because they just, whoever took the picture, it's not like they weren't thinking or whatever, but they just didn't realize that it needs to look polished and professional before I can send it out. Again, you're not doing yourself any favors. If I send a headshot to major media and it doesn't look professional, it's instant, right? We just like we do judge books by the cover, we're going to judge that author by that headshot, and we're going to think, wow, they couldn't even spend a little bit of extra money or have a friend even do a nice headshot. And then, speaking of the book and the cover, I need that as well. I need to give people an idea of what the book looks like. And it's not just for pitching. It's once I actually get them placed, perhaps it's in a blog or an article, those pictures, the book, the headshot, all of those images, a lot of times are used to actually augment the actual page of the article. So those things all get put to good use. So those are the main components. The other thing that I will add, especially once you start to actually book those interviews, is to have a list of questions/talking points. And a lot of times I just do these questions and talking points. I don't wait for the media person to ask me for them, because I want to give them as much as I can to make their job easier. My job as a publicist is to make that producer's job so freaking easy that when they need somebody, they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to call Desiree because, dang, she's got everything in order. It just goes bam, bam, bam. If I make their job easier, they're more likely to book my authors and come back again and again. So with those talking points questions, a lot of times I'm feeding them exactly what they can ask of the author. So it could be something of, let's talk about their trip to Costa Rica when they were researching this book. Things like that. It's almost like little prompts, again, to help the host or the writer get through that article or that interview. And again, it's all what it boils down to. It's all a matter of making it easier for them so that they want to cover you.
I love that. Because this is what I usually get. I understood this in theory when I was before I started having my own show, and now I have my own show. I can't tell you how much time I spend going through finding headshots, finding bios, going to websites, and seeing that the bios really don't say anything or they say too much. I like doing my own research before an episode goes on, and so I don't mind if you don't have talking points or such, especially because of the format of my show. But there are definitely shows where they want to hit every talking point. If you go on Entrepreneur on Fire with John Lee Dumas, he has a very strict format. So I love this idea of thinking like a publicist or thinking like the podcaster or the interviewer, how can I make this easy for them so that they want to carry my interview the next time? We're very short-sighted, but this is like a long-term approach of, it's very hard to find a good contact, a good press contact. It's not easy. I assume it's not even easy for you when you're trying to reach out to new people. Easier now, but to email a bunch of people cold is not easy. So when you find that person, you want to make it easy for them to want to work with you again and again and again and again, right?
Exactly. Yeah, precisely. Again, especially me as a publicist, I've got several authors, and I'm always looking for a way with that. Say I'm working with a producer. It's like, okay, well, they just interviewed my next author, but it's always the next thing, right? It's like, okay, which one of my other authors are they going to be interested in next? So for me, it's all about the relationships and making their life easier. Now, even if you're an author and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm just me, I'm just pushing me, so what do I care what happens with this producer after I do my interview? I got what I needed, right? Well, you shouldn't even think like that, because I can't tell you how many times I make a connection with a producer and they're like, oh my God, you know what? This guest would be perfect on my friend's show. Hey, I know a producer over at XYZ. Do you mind if I introduce you? And then bam. That's how it's done. That's how relationships are made in this business. That's called networking. So even you as an author, once you establish that relationship, whatever you do, don't burn any bridges. Don't, act unprofessionally. Don't give them any reason to not think, hey, this author was so amazing. I now have to tell all my producer friends about it. And within the media business, you never know. That little producer, and I should call them a little producer, but that producer at a small market radio station out in the middle of Kansas might have a relationship with a big producer at one of the top 5 DMAs. So you don't want to come across unprofessional. You want to be friendly. You want them to want to recommend you to people they know. And I even saw it very recently. Oh, another thing, it's not hard to do. Look at Facebook for possible media contacts. Just last week, I saw somebody who was on my friend's page, but I had somehow they got there. I didn't really know this person. And he was kind of lamenting a little bit because he does one of those shows where it's kind of science and, the imagination meet, and it's about UFOs and, speculative type stuff. And he basically was lamenting because a potential guest kind of was rude to him and said something to the effect of, oh, I only do legitimate science shows. I'm not going to do your show. And I actually felt bad for the guy because it's like, darn, that author or that potential guest, now you just ruined it. Maybe this show wasn't right for you, but to come off with a cocky attitude like that, now this guy, who probably has a whole network of friends, isn't going to recommend you for any other shows. And there might be shows that actually fit a little bit better. And then, of course, I took advantage of that situation, and I messaged him, and I pitched him, and now I have one of my authors on his show coming up in November.
Yeah, that's great. I Oh, I love when you're talking about, that it's all about relationships and all about like networking and all about like expanding your network out little by little and like how it can exponentially increase over time. Because I can't tell you how often I get someone to be like, "Hey, do you have a press list?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I have a press list. I have a press list, my press list, that is not going to work for you because like none of these people know who you are. What works for you is like find some press that like know you and then work out from there." I remember back years ago, I would buy press lists and buy lists expecting like, oh, it worked for somebody else, so it would work for me, and it worked a grand total of 0 times because you have no relationship with that person when you're emailing them.
Yeah, exactly. And in the world of PR, list management is everything, and there's many different schools of thought. Back in the day, quote unquote, so to speak, and I'm talking, even as far back as 10 years ago, it was a different animal, and your press list or your Rolodex was kind of like your clout. As a publicist, people would literally ask you, before hiring you or bringing you on for a project, how fat is your Rolodex? Who do you have to bring to the table? And that is still true. Now, what the internet gave us was something really, really cool and really, really bad at the same time. It gave us the ability to create huge databases of press contacts. So whereas back in the day, you kind of had to hand cultivate all of these contacts and put them in your own list, your own spreadsheet. With different programs like Cision and Meltwater, where you can basically buy access to a database or buy access to the ability to make a list, any journalist virtually can go in there and make these lists. And what ends up happening is these reporters, the journalists, the bloggers, etc., they just get inundated. So again, on the bright side, it's really, quote unquote, easy to create a press list as compared to what it was, quote unquote, back in the day. But the negative side of that is that those lists and those reporters who are on it just get slammed so much that you are just noise in their inbox. If you even make their inbox, chances are you're going directly to spam. So with that in mind, there are different strategies that you can take. I still use my big ol' honking lists. And this is the way I explain it to my clients, too. I'm not just going to go and blast your information to these guys. Yes, I'm going to do that. I can also break down my list according to beats or the type of topics that journalists cover. So, for example, if I have a new book coming out and it's centered around the health and wellness industry, I'm not going to pitch that necessarily to somebody who I know only wants to write about sci-fi and fantasy. It just doesn't fit. So I can basically cull down my lists and create custom lists for somebody and pitch just to them. Additionally to that, what I do a lot of times too is I kind of start very broad, think of it like a funnel. I'm going to do this big scattered shotgun type of a thing to kind of see if anything comes back. Sometimes you never know too. Sometimes the reporter that you wouldn't think is interested in something suddenly is. They might be because they have, if it's in the health and wellness industry, for example, it might be, oh, well, I have a niece who has that, and that's interesting for me. So even though they don't normally write about it, they might. You just don't know unless you pitch them. So after I do that kind of shotgun effect, I'll go back in, make those custom lists, do custom pitches, and then it's kind of like pounding the pavement where I'm looking for the journalists and the reporters who I feel would really benefit from this type of author. I can go and I can look at what they've done in the past. If they've done similar stories, I can kind of appeal to them that way. And that's where I'm going to take that pitch and make it a little bit more specialized so that I'm really drilling into what the potential reporter or journalist is looking for. So that's kind of my approach in a nutshell. And again, as far as the way people do PR and the way people manage their lists, I don't know if there's a quote-unquote right way or one way to do it anymore. I know of a lot of publicists who are like me, who do different strategies. And sometimes the only thing that really matters is if it works, then it works. And then that's what you do.
Absolutely. But there is some wrong things to do, like just blast out the same thing to 10,000 people and expect a good result. Like, there's not necessarily a right way, but like, that's a pretty wrong way to go about it, right?
My list, I have right now in constant contact about a little over 14,000, and that's not even all of my contacts. I just kind of kept it under the 15,000 mark, so I didn't have to pay the extra money for constant contact. So what I do is I have a very big list, and once a month I will give them the heads up on all of the authors that I'm currently representing. It's one time per month. That list is pretty much used to, quote unquote, getting that pitch from me, so they don't necessarily mind it. And like I said, a lot of times I'll get very little response, but key in on somebody who might have a special interest, it's just like you struck gold. So for me, with this big old honking list, and because of the fact that I've got many authors under me, it makes a little bit more sense. The problem, though, you have, and this is why sometimes authors who are doing their own marketing and PR, if they're just pitching themselves, they have less of a chance on their own to appeal to somebody. So again, imagine I got a tip sheet, and I've got 7, 8 to 10 authors on it, like a little blurb about each one, and I'm sending that out. If you're a journalist, you might not necessarily be interested in the sci-fi fantasy authors, but all of a sudden, darn, there's this memoir set in Los Angeles, and I'm doing a story about Los Angeles history. Now I've kind of keyed into them. So with that big old honking list, it kind of depends upon how you're using it and your expectations from it. I recently had a journalist from the AP, the Associated Press, respond to a mass pitch that I did. And, it's one of those things where fingers crossed, right? A pickup like that could just take an author and push them over the edge. So I wouldn't necessarily discount the big honking pitches, but then also be aware of how you're using it. If you're an individual author, it might not be the best strategy, and don't be disappointed if it doesn't work, because again, it's like you're mining for gold. You're not going to hit gold every time, but if you actually do, it could be huge.
How long does it take for you to cultivate a contact, or like get a story through a pipeline? Is it often a quick process, or does it take like weeks? Could you talk a little bit about how, what if I'm sending an initial email to somebody, like the length of time that it takes and before that initial email or that initial pitch becomes an actual story?
Oh, it varies. I will have producers who they're under deadline and they need somebody on the air with them the next day, and that they'll come to me. Or I might send somebody a pitch and I got lucky. I hit them at the right time. They're putting together their next month's schedule, and I can get people booked in for the entire next month. I've had that before where, people have come back and said, okay, I want all your authors. Let's just plug in the dates for them. And then I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, I just booked somebody for an interview at the end of January. So they are somebody who I can tell this person is very organized, and she's like, okay, I do, 2 or 3 interviews a month, and I like to book in advance. And, she's just getting her calendar filled up, because she's not the kind of person who necessarily flies by the seat of her pants. In addition to that, every type of media is different. Somebody who's doing a daily radio show, imagine that. Imagine being a producer on a daily radio show. Every day you have to have a guest. Every day you have to, plug somebody in. And you always are juggling schedules, and people, can't make it, etc. So it can be really fast-paced, and it can give a publicist or an author who's kind of standing in the wings, ready to go at any time, the advantage, because you're always going to be there. Magazines, on the other hand, they might be doing, they are in many cases doing their editorial calendars, 6 months out, and that's the example I just gave you with the January booking. So it just varies, and when I am booking guests, I am dealing with all different types of personalities, all different levels of being organized. And I, as a publicist, just have to know who I'm dealing with, how to deal with them. And again, it goes back to the more organized I am, the more I have that headshot and the book cover, those talking points, etc. I've got my arsenal ready. So no matter what, I'm able to give that producer, that host, or that blogger the information that they need. So whether or not they need to get that interview turned around the next day or in 6 months, they're going to have everything that they need from me.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about you now, and you are also an author. Could you talk a little bit? I actually met you at a GLAW's writing conference, and could you tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure. Oh, yeah, thank you for that. Like so many people, and much like you, Russell, we tend to wear more than one hat. So my little story in a nutshell is I've worked in over 20 years. My quote-unquote professional gig was vice president of a digital marketing agency, and we had lots of different types of clients, from software companies to nonprofits, real estate, consumer goods, fashion, you name it. We had those types of clients. And in the meantime, I had written my own book, and I was really excited about it because I was able to, apply a lot of the marketing and PR, the integrated marketing techniques is technically the industry term for it, to my own marketing. And I realized really quickly that marketing books was so much different than any other type of industry out there. And I know I'm, kind of preaching to the choir at this point, Russell, because you become a master at so many different elements of online marketing and event marketing for books. It really is so much different than what I would do for consumer goods or for a service industry, etc. And I really loved writing. I love books. I love authors. So that's what inspired me to start my own company, my own Black Chateau. Now, back to my writing, I actually wrote a book. It's called Oubliette, A Forgotten Little Place. It's under the nom de plume Vanta en Black. So if you're kind of wondering, searching on Google or whatever, just look under Vanta en Black, or you can even go to vantaenblack.com and you can see the book. And yeah, it's a book of fiction, and I totally enjoyed writing it and marketing it, and it's really served as the catalyst for me to launch my own company now, Black Chateau, where I'm helping other authors and doing their marketing and PR for them.
Awesome. What's the book about?
Now, do you know what an oubliette is?
I have no idea. I have been wondering, this is one of the questions that I wanted to ask, because I have been wondering this since I met you years ago. What is an oubliette?
Okay. It literally was a hole, like a pit, inside of castles, where they would throw people to forget about them. That's literally what it means, a forgotten little place. And when I first heard about these types of places, it was just a really creepy, cool, gnarly idea, right? And I was watching one of those documentaries, and they were talking about how they pulled out the bones from over 150 different people from this oubliette at Leap Castle in Ireland. And this was apparently the most haunted castle in Ireland. And I just thought, all of those people who were basically left to die in that oubliette, they had a story, whether they were there because their enemy wanted to get rid of them, they were a criminal, maybe they were innocent and somebody just wanted to make sure that they got rid of the person who was standing in the way of their inheritance. There's a story behind all of those people, and they were all kind of brought together in this horrible, despicable way to share one grave for eternity. So that was the inspiration for my fictional novel called Oubliette, where it's set in a castle in France, and it's several different intertwining stories from people at different points in history, in French history, who died in this oubliette. And then there's a modern day storyline of two sisters who are drawn to this castle, and one of them is the one who can eventually save the spirits that are trapped inside of it. But things get kind of twisted and gnarly and spooky and creepy, and it all kind of comes together quite spectacularly at the end.
That is totally different than when I imagined what oubliette meant, or what the story was about based on like just looking at that cover. I totally did that.
Thank you.
Yeah, go buy that thing. And I want to talk. I want to end with talking about Black Chateau and and how authors can get in contact with you. Could you talk a little bit about what you do at Black Chateau?
Sure. It's blackchateauenterprises.com. I'm easy to find on Facebook and such, Instagram as well. And basically, I can do full service marketing and PR for authors. Everything from website design, development, graphic art, social media, online advertising, SEO, etc. And I do have clients that take advantage of that. The meat and potatoes, though, of what I do is called the Author Network. And that concept came about, again, when I was doing my own marketing and PR, and I really just asked myself, what are the main things that authors are looking for when they're marketing and publicizing their books? What do we really want? And I realized, well, darn, those reviews are hard to get, aren't they? I want reviews. I want people who are honestly reading my book and reviewing them. And then that review strategy kind of extends not just for Amazon, but kind of a social media buzz too. So whether the reviewer is posting it on their own blog or website, on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even Goodreads, it's just a matter of getting reviews for your book, right? The next thing I realized is authors have worked so hard. They want the recognition in the media. They want to be able to do interviews or have people write about their books, do, more professional book reviews on different websites and blogs. Again, it goes back to a lot of my clients are indie or small press authors because they don't have the big guys and the big bucks behind them. But if they can get, a couple of interviews and articles under their belt, that's something that just kind of helps raise their profile in so many ways, not just from a branding perspective, but even SEO, and people now can start to notice them. The last thing you want as an author is for somebody to have heard about you, go to Google, and they see that on Goodreads there's no avatar and there's no reviews. And then they go to Amazon and they see that there's no reviews. And their search results only come up with 2 or 3 little things. What is much better is when they see the reviews and then they also see that, oh, this person had an article in, say, I don't know, the Huffington Post, and on this website somebody interviewed this author. So that kind of helps, again, raise the level of awareness and raise your branding and your profile. And then the other thing that I found that authors are really looking for is just some kind of consistency. And what I do with the Author Network is every month there's an article that we write where we combine several of the authors or books together in one article, and then we push that out on what are called publisher sites. And by publisher sites, I mean like you have your CNN, your Mashable, your Time.com, People.com, Oprah.com. And I'm not even going to say that it's a mysterious way of doing it. It's native advertising. And I use a platform, and I take that article, and I push it out there so that, again, now we have content. We have an actual article that you can say, hey, look at this. I'm in this article, and isn't that great? And additionally, you're getting that branding, that awareness, and then people who actually click on those articles come back to the article where they can learn more about the author, more about the book. They get a link to the book page on Amazon as well as the Amazon or the author's actual website. So I'm pulling and pushing traffic back and forth. I'm giving authors content that they can use. I'm giving them social media buzz, and I'm giving them the ability or the opportunity, I should say, to get interviews and press coverage. And I package that up because, let me tell you this, Russell, and I'm not exaggerating, the same type of services bundled like that easily would cost you $3,000 a month from one of the big publicity firms. And I basically structured it in such a way that I got the cost down to $500 a month, because the whole idea behind it is, let's face it, we as authors, we don't necessarily have tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars to put behind a marketing campaign. So I made it affordable so that authors can get just a little bit of all of those things that they really, really want and need to promote their books. And that again, that's called the Author Network. And that's kind of like the main meat and potatoes of what I offer with Black Chateau.
Awesome. And if people wanted to find out about it, they would go to blackchateauenterprises.com,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
All right, so here is the last question that I have for you. This is when all of the artists and writers that have a sign in the background come on and wake up, turn around, or let's perk up, and you get to impart to them the one piece of advice you want them to leave this with to go on. It could be something you talked about already. It could be something you haven't talked about yet. But what do you want the authors that are listening and the artists who are listening to leave this interview with?
You need to plan your strategy. And as difficult as it might be to put on that marketing hat and that strategist hat when you're a creative, because I get it, I'm a creative, but then I also need to plan and strategize. You have to do it. Don't wait until the last minute to want to quote unquote market your books. There's a strategy that you need to have in place a month out, 2 months out, 3 months out. And if you're putting all of this work and blood and sweat and tears into your book, and you want it to go, ta-da, here it is, and you want to see a big splash, you can't expect to do that with only 2 weeks prior marketing and PR. You just can't. So you're not doing yourself any favors. I've had authors say, oh, but I can't afford it, so I have to start now. And I just think, wow, how can you afford not to after you put all that time and energy into it? And now you want to rush everything in the 11th hour. Give yourself time, plan, strategize, make a calendar. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It can literally be just an outline of 6 months before my book is released, this is what I want to do. This is when I need to make my press list. This is when I need to do my first press release announcing that the book is coming. This is when I want to start taking pre-orders for my book. There's all sorts of little benchmarks that you want to map out so that you can plan for along the way. So that, again, you don't release your book to the masses and then decide you're going to start doing marketing and PR.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks so much, Desiree, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Russell, thank you. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate it too.
So that was Desiree Duffy. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, go find her online and tell her how much you appreciate her coming on. And don't forget to go buy my book, Sell Your Soul, How to Build Your Creative Career, at GoSellYourSoul.com. It's just $5. If you've enjoyed any of these shows, I promise you the book is packed with content. Also, please, please, please go rate, review, and subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And that's it, wannabes and creators. Have a great day. I will see you next time.